Well, hello, class. This is really a long but a very important chapter on conflict and negotiation. We spent a lot of time talking about conflict and talking about negotiation, but this particular section is going to focus on strategies for negotiations. And I want to bring your attention actually to table 10.3 in your book. Strategy, outcome, tactics in negotiation. The first column in the table is on strategy. The second column is on outputs sought. The third column is on appropriate tactics. Now, when we talk about strategies in negotiations, we're simply talking about reaching desired goals. What are both sides trying to get out of the negotiation? How important is that? There has to be added value to both sides. In a sense, as I mentioned earlier, it is very much like a contract. Somebody has to gain something, somebody has to lose something in the negotiation. We have to have substantive outcomes. That means that we need to focus on the content of the negotiation itself, but at the same time, what type of things are coming together? What is as the book states, the relationship outcome? We want to focus on keeping the relationship between both negotiating parties. So here again now, let's draw to page 357, table 10-3. The first column is talking about collaboration. And we want to build a substantive relationship. So the book tells you, and it says it in the table going across, about the appropriate tactics. And that is to try to conduct the negotiations on a neutral ground. And that means that you, say for example, it's between a manager and a company and a subordinate, and they're doing a review. And it's uncomfortable sometimes to be in the surrounding. A lot of distractions, a lot of noise. Maybe a sales manager with a salesperson. You go off campus and maybe go to lunch or something and discuss, the neutral ground, where you can both look at mutual goals and what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? It also talks about opponents' demands, but the thing is, a demand is more like a request, What is it that you need? What resources do you need to do what you want to do most effectively? And that's on both sides. And the table also talks about gaining an equitable exchange between the parties. So that's important. What is the end desired goal? What is the mutual benefit of the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Who's going to gain? Who's going to lose? But overall, how are we going to accomplish what we're trying to do here? And the other thing it talks about is looking at concessions on both sides. So you certainly want to do that. Both sides have to agree or disagree with something. But then come up with a timeline, what they call a time value line. That is, when will we get it done, and what is the cost of completing the task? There are costs to everything. Who's giving up what? Who's gaining what on which side? And the most important thing is the last thing stated there. Have mutually beneficial outcomes to the whole thing. So that's what's really important. So once we have the collaboration, the next thing we look at is what is the competitive component here? And that is just the substance of what we're talking about. So we have to set ground rules. What are the ground rules for the negotiations? What is it that we're expected to get out of all of this? Look at the opponent's agenda. Don't discount someone's ability to get something done. If they're demanding something, you got to kind of pull back and say, rethink this. Just by dictating what you want, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. You got to be collegial in how you approach these things. And both sides need to make concessions, or it'll be like computing pi. Not a repeating decimal, but you can't go on and on and on, and you don't come to a conclusion. And try to get the line items done first. Don't spend too much time on things that are meaningless, you know? Like, it's like buying a $50,000 car and you're quivering over $50 on whether they'll throw the mats in or not. Get the important items out of the way that you can both agree on, the line items. And then the next step in your table you look at is the subordinative part, and that is building the relationship only. Sometimes go to the opponent's grounds, but be very congenial about it. Look at their agenda and try to be discreet. Again, concede to demands if those demands are justified. Don't be so egotistical that you hold on to your ground for the sake of it. That's not a way to solve a problem. You also want to get a good, if you do make a concession, get the other side to buy in to what you're conceding on and make good of it. It took a lot of effort for you to give something up. What are they going to do about preserving what you thought so highly about? Downplay your own demands. That gives a little leverage to the other side, but more leverage to you for the next line item coming up. And then the last step is avoidance. This part, that what you're trying to accomplish, neither has relationship or anything substantive. Delegate, as the book says, your negotiations responsibly. Forego negotiation and resort to standard operating procedures for decision making. So there's a lot to say about that. Look at figure 10-3 on page 358. It talks about choice of outcome. And look at that really hard. You got competitive and substantive only. You've got collaboration or relationship and substantive. You got avoidance of neither relationship or substantive, and then you have subordinative or relationship only. So look at the horizontal axis. You're only looking at the importance of the relationship from low to high? Are you somewhere in the middle of all this? And on the vertical axis, you're looking at the importance of the substance. In any negotiation, you have to maintain a relationship. There's no doubt about that. But you can't be too, as they say, wishy-washy. And you can't be too hard. You got to be somewhere in the middle of it all. You get what you want, but you get your point across. On the other side, all right, you have to look at the importance of the substance. Are you direct? Are you succinctly consistent with what you're asking for? And does it all make sense? You really have to bring your ego out of the way when you're negotiating. It really is a big component of ego. And you really have to be on top of this. This is really important. So, when you look at these types of things, when you're negotiating, you have to really get into mediation, because mediation sometimes is important when two parties can't really come to a conclusion. You need to have somebody separate the forest from the trees. And that's really important. Somebody has to be able to pull back and say, you know what? All of this doesn't really make sense because you're demanding too much on your side, and on the other side, your demands aren't realistic. A mediator can pull back, look at the facts on both sides, very much like a judge, and you have to have faith in that mediator that they're going to help you come to an amicable conclusion. Okay, so that's my video right now, and going into tomorrow, I am asking you to go ahead and read OB at Work on page 359. It's entitled The New Recruit. Carl's confidence in Ken pays off. It's going from page 359 to 360. And I want you to read that. And going into tomorrow's module, I am going to give you another one to read. It's called Spotlight on Research. It's on page 360. And it's their gender differences in beliefs about requests for more money. It's a very interesting case study, and there are questions for discussion. And I'm going to ask you tomorrow to read that spotlight, answer the questions for discussion, and that'll be all for this week. You just have the participative discussion, and that participative discussion will be due, okay, by the middle of next week. And that will bring us to the 19th of April. Now, mind you, next week, we're going to be closing out the week with a participative and an individual essay. It'll be a last individual assignment. So there's going to be a lot riding on what's due next week. This participative discussion from this week that I'm going to give you, okay, that I've already given you, on Wednesday, that's going to be due next Wednesday. And then next week I'm going to be giving you one more participative discussion. And actually, I am going to assign that on Monday. so you will be able to have it done by the 22nd. And the individual assignment I am going to give you on Tuesday. So it's going to be a pretty light week, and it's going to be more cases on conflict negotiations. So bear with me, and this will all pan out very nicely. Okay? So have a good week, and look for tomorrow. Today we're on Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday. And like I said, I'm going to continue with conflict on some cases that I'm going to ask you to read. That's the spotlight on research, okay? And that's going to be for tomorrow. But I'll give you some more insight on that. All right? Have a good night.